Many of you know me in this church as Robin's daughter, but today I am here to talk about my experience as a teen on the La Romana trip in the Dominican Republic. I went into this trip with only the knowledge of the stories my sister would tell me. Some happy and sad, but mostly devastating, as she went on and on about the kids that she had to leave and the mothers she had to nurture. Knowing all of this, it was hard for me to be excited about this trip, but more worried. I was still uncertain if I wanted to go until Zenny asked me in homeroom if I was going to go too. We responded, "I'll do it if you do it." After we looked after each other, as the youngest girls on the trip, we looked after each other as we were the youngest girls on the trip. We're just kids. I was scared and intimidated on packing day by the amount of clothing, medication, and even just basic needs like toothpaste and body wash piling on the tables of the parish hall. My mom told me not to write about this, but I would be lying if I said it didn't affect my experience. 4 days before leaving for the trip, my mom came home to tell me that Andy, who was a beloved member in our family, is leaving us. Andy was our rock, and even though we would bump heads, he was one of my best friends and a stepfather to me since I was 1. At this moment, me and my siblings' world went numb, and we didn't know what life was like without him. And at this moment, this trip was not a main concern to me, but my mom thought it would be good for us. I was hesitant knowing that my mom is the type of person to put everyone before herself, but at a time like this, that's the opposite of what she needed. But we were boarding a plane in 4 days. In the beginning of this trip, I found I was not engaged and just truly not being myself. In this church, I often heard the expression, "Teens are the heart of our community." I heard this over and over, but didn't truly know what it meant until this trip. I didn't know what it meant until the girls and Rowan were lifting me and especially my mom up, whether that meant deep conversations, Grace just bringing her speaker on the bus, and hot seat late at night to lighten the mood. We're all just kids. On Thursday, I needed a break from my job and went outside with kids. After the swarm of kids calmed down, I began talking with some teen girls in the batey, and we communicated the best we could. Based on this conversation, I had realized we aren't different. They worry about their hair, how their hair looks, their outfits, and if their top hugs their body the right way. And some people will think that should be the least of their concern, but they're just kids. They have the same worries as us. I thought this trip would be filled with sadness and devastation, but instead I was greeted with an overwhelming amount of joy, even when it seemed that there was nothing to be joyful about. The kids and teens on this trip and in the batey radiated that feeling. We're all kids, and we need to start treating ourselves like them.
Wow, I don't really want to follow that, but I did not write very much. Okay. When I was in the Dominican Republic, I was mainly working with the children, as I am neither a registered nurse, nor do I speak any Spanish. So for the most part, I was able to see how bad the bates are, not through the voices of adults, but through the eyes of children. I held about 30 young children throughout the week, and only a small fraction had most of their teeth still intact. Same goes for the older children, too. It's because their diet is primarily sugarcane, and the fact that very few of them have access to toothpaste and brushes. They also had cuts and scrapes left untreated as they played in the dirt, which is a breeding ground for infections. The older boys played baseball barefoot in a dirt field where broken glass and sharp metal were everywhere because they didn't even own shoes. I think that the trip was really eye-opening, not just to others' struggles and hardships, but also how even with so little, they can do so much. We as Americans who were born in this country and with this level of privilege, we are so used to the superfluous that going to a third world country where each person has one set of shoes, 2 outfits, and no toys or anything extra is truly shocking. These kids were so grateful just to be given crayons or paper, things we so easily take for granted. And I am very thankful that I was able to go on this trip, as it was very eye-opening, and I hope that I can go back next year.
Hi, my name is Becki Gray, and I was privileged to be able to attend La Romana this year. I'm somewhere in the secular humanist camp, so feel free to think the word divinity every time I say humanity here or not. I went this year because Archie really wanted to go. I could make the schedule work, and this isn't a church mission that filled me with squick. It felt like meeting people where they are, bringing some of our readily accessible medications and clothes that people really need there, providing important education on reproductive and sexual health, something American men, women, and children also desperately need, as evidenced by any amount of time spent on the internet.
Yes.
I spent 3 days on the construction team and 2 days on the medicals team, with a total of 4 of those days spent at the Bates and 1 day at the hospital. What I saw while we were there is that there are certain universals, how teenagers feel about their parents. My Rowan would probably like you to know that the word I'm looking for here is disdain, which is closer to contempt than dislike. The effect of policy decisions on day-to-day lives, the positive impact of some food and a smile on someone who's having a really crappy day. What I also saw was a lot of people asserting their humanity in a dehumanizing situation, which is both an awful thing to witness and an uplifting thing to witness. I additionally saw in sharp relief the reality that we are all shy away from in the US, the sad fact that the circumstances of our birth impact our options so acutely. The zip code you are born in has more indication of your potential overall success in life than most other factors in your life. And where that really showed up most pointedly for me is when I was sitting across from a young woman, smartly dressed, speaking at least 3 languages, as well as I speak the one, getting her vital signs in a mission clinic, and knowing that she has few options, as the women on the Bates are not allowed to work in the fields, and there are also no other jobs for them. The need is so great there for healthcare, for food, for money, for good jobs, for the basic human right that is citizenship. This is not that different from where we are here, just the scale changes. Wealth is relative. Seeing the humanity in everyone and connecting to that, whether they are a panhandler, barista, cashier, or a stockbroker in Boston or Worcester, or a sugarcane worker, one of the many children and women on the Bates, construction workers, doctors, or politicians in the DR, is rather more important than being right. So I would go back if I can make the schedule work, because there's a lot of hope to be shared, and this is still a mission trip that doesn't fill me with squick. We are meeting people where they are, providing them with what they know that they need, and most of all, we are sharing our humanity and connecting.
Bring this down. My name is Erin O'Connor. The February trip was my second trip to La Romana, and it was my first time planning for this trip after Doug had retired from this job after 10 years. I was told that Doug would talk about all that we accomplished on the trip, and that's an easy task. To list out all the care, the giving, and the construction building that we did in February. However, there was a conversation on the bus on the ride home from Logan with Robin, and it echoed in my mind. She said her goal for the trip was less on what we gave to La Romana and more on what we took away from it. And it felt a little self-serving when I heard that, and so I had to think about it a little bit more. Isn't this trip all about giving? And I see now that it's both about giving and receiving. So first, what did we give in La Romana? We brought about 2,700 pounds of medication and clothing that we then distributed with your donations. We also provided about 2,000 good meals of beans and rice and pasta with clam sauce and olive oil. Our talented and compassionate nurses cared for about 650 patients in need, and we provided laughter, fun, and hope to dozens of children. We fixed 7 machines at the Good Samaritan Hospital, and we helped to update the electrical wiring system at the hospital's dialysis center. We put up metal framing, drywall, spackled walls, and stairwells. We painted planters and window frames. And we began the work of building cement walkways and stairways for homes in the Bate. We gave of our time, our sweat, our knowledge, our organization, our good nature, and our happy hearts. And we used our hands and our skills. But we brought back so much more. We have more compassion in our hearts. We have a greater humility and a stronger realization that the place and the circumstances that we're born into has made our lives so much easier in comparison. We have an admiration of contentment with simplicity, without things. Sorry. So the trip provided the opportunity to remove the busyness in our interactions with each other, and instead we had time to really connect in more profound and personal ways. And above all, we had the honor we provided to strangers the most basic needs: food, care, clothing, shelter, and in return, it changed us.